Topaz, sea chrysolite. Turquoise. While there was a tendency to attribute the virtues originally ascribed to one particular stone to others of the same or similar color and appearance, certain stones were regarded as possessing special virtues not commonly attributed to others. A notable instance of this is the quality supposed to inhere in the turquoise. This stone was known in Egypt from a very early period, and is later described by Pliny under the name of Calais. For Pliny, and for all those who derived their information from him or from the sources he used, the turquoise only participated in the virtues assigned to all blue or greenish-blue stones. But from the 13th century, when the name turquoise was first employed, we read that the stone possessed the power to protect the wearer from injury by falling, more especially from horseback. Later, this was extended to cover falls from a building or over a precipice. A 14th century authority, the Lapidaire of Sir John Mandeville, states that the turquoise protected horses from the ill effects resulted from drinking cold water when overheated by exertion. And it is said that the Turks often attach these stones to the bridles and frontlets of their horses as amulets. They are also so used in Samarkand and Persia. We might therefore be justified in supposing that the turquoise was originally used in the East as a horse amulet, and the belief in its power to protect from falls may have arisen from the idea that it rendered the horse more sure-footed and enduring. As the horse was often regarded as a symbol of the sun in its rapid course through the blue heavens, the celestial hue of the turquoise may have caused it to be associated in some way with the horse. We can only hazard this as a plausible conjecture. Probably the earliest notice of the peculiar superstition in regard to the turquoise, namely that it preserves the wearer from injury in case of falling, is contained in Volmar's 13th century Steinbuch, where we read, "Whoever owns the true turquoise set in gold will not injure any of his limbs when he falls, whether he be riding or walking, so long as he has the stone with him." Anselmus de Boot, court physician of Emperor Rudolph II, tells a story of a turquoise that, after being 30 years in the possession of a Spaniard, was offered for sale with the rest of the owner's property. Everyone was amazed to find it had entirely lost its color. Nevertheless, de Boot's father bought it for a trifling sum. On his return home, however, ashamed to wear so mean-looking a gem, he gave it to his son, saying, "Son, as the virtues of the turquoise are said to exist only when the stone has been given, I will try its efficacy by bestowing it upon thee." Little appreciating the gift, the recipient had his arms engraved on it as though it had been only a common agate, and wore it as a signet. He had scarcely worn it a month, however, before it resumed its pristine beauty and daily seemed to increase in splendor. Could we accept this statement as true, we would have here an altogether unique instance of the recovery by a turquoise of the blue color it had lost. Not long after, the powers of de Boot's turquoise were put to the test. As he was returning to Bohemia from Padua, where he had just taken his degree, he was forced to traverse a narrow and dangerous road at night. Suddenly his horse stumbled and threw him heavily to the ground, but, strange to say, neither horse nor rider was injured by the fall. Next morning, while washing his hands, de Boot remarked that about a quarter of his turquoise had broken away. Nevertheless, the stone did not lose its virtue. Some time afterward, when the wearer was lifting a very heavy pole, he felt all at once a sharp pain in his side and heard his ribs crack, so that he feared he had injured himself seriously. However, it turned out that he had not broken any bones, but had simply strained himself. But on looking at his turquoise, he saw that it had again broken into 2 pieces. A singular virtue ascribed to the turquoise was that of striking the hour correctly if the stone were suspended from a thread held between the thumb and index finger in such a way that a slight vibration would make the stone strike against the side of a glass. De Boot states that he made the experiment successfully, but he very sensibly explains the apparent wonder by the unconscious effect of the mind on the body. The expectation that the stone was going to strike a certain number of times induced an involuntary movement of the hand. The turquoise seems to have been worn almost exclusively by men at the beginning of the 17th century, for De Boot, writing in 1609, said that it was so highly regarded by men that no man considered his hand to be well adorned unless he wore a fine turquoise. Women, however, rarely wore this gem. This custom was much in vogue among the Englishmen who traveled in the Orient until a score of years ago. The Persians fully appreciate the beauty and power of this, their natural stone, and they have a saying that to escape evil and attain good fortune, one must see the reflection of the new moon either on the face of a friend, on a copy of the Koran, or on a turquoise, thus ranking this stone with two most precious things, a friend and the source and warrant of religion. Possibly we should take this proverbial saying to indicate that whoever has a true friend, a copy of the sacred volume or a turquoise will be preserved from harm. The turquoise of the Los Sorios mines in New Mexico is rudely extracted by building large fires at the base of the rock until it becomes heated, when cold water is dashed over it, the sharp change of temperature splitting up the rock. Some of the fragmentary material thus secured is worked up in the region into heart-shaped ornaments or amulets, locally called malacates. The religious veneration with which many of the New Mexico Indians still regard the turquoise was noted by Major Hyde when he explored the region in 1880, for some Pueblo Indians from Santo Domingo, New Mexico, expressed strong disapproval of his action in extracting turquoise from the old mine, as they looked upon this as a sacred stone which should not pass into the possession of those whose savior was not a Montezuma. The ruins called Los Muertos, situated 9 miles from Tempe, Arizona, have furnished a peculiarly interesting amulet or fetish of Zuni workmanship. This is a seashell which has been coated with black pitch, in which are encrusted turquoises and garnets so disposed in mosaic as to represent clearly enough the figure of a toad, the sacred emblem of the Zunis. The sacred character with which this stone was invested is shown by the wealth of turquoise ornaments found in some of the burials, notably in those of Pueblo Bonito, unearthed by Mr. George H. Pepper in 1896. This is one of the Chaco Cañon groups of ruins in the northwestern part of New Mexico. In one case, nearly 9,000 beads and pendants of turquoise were found on or about a single skeleton. There was abundant evidence in the special care bestowed upon the burial that the deceased must have been a man of high rank, and the condition of the skull plainly indicated that he had met a violent death. The 1,980 beads found on the breast of the skeleton are believed to have been strung as a necklace, and the position of other masses of these beads renders it probable that they had been used for bracelets or anklets, the strings having decayed and disappeared in the course of time. The most interesting of the turquoise objects are, however, the pendants worked into various forms designed to favor the entrance of some guardian spirit into the stone. In this single burial were found pendants shaped more or less roughly into the forms of a rabbit, a bird, an insect? A human foot, and a shoe. Around another burial in the same chamber were strewn nearly 6,000 turquoise beads and pendants. In all, 24,932 beads were found in these burials. Another very interesting object from Pueblo Bonito, and one having probably a special ceremonial use and value, is a turquoise basket, that is to say, a cylindrical basket 3 inches in diameter and 6 inches long, originally made of slender splints with a coating of gum in which 1,214 small pieces of turquoise have been set. These are very closely set and form a complete mosaic covering for the object. The legends of the Navajos contain allusions to turquoise jewel baskets, and Mr. Pepper raises the question whether or no this can refer to those made by the Pueblo Indians. The Apache name for the turquoise is duklij, which signifies either a green or a blue stone, no distinction being made between the two colors. This stone is highly prized for its talismanic virtues. Indeed, the possession of a turquoise was indispensable for a medicine man, as without it he would not receive proper recognition. That some of the powers of the thunderstone were ascribed to the turquoise by the tribes appears from the fancy that a man who could go to the end of a rainbow after a storm and search in the damp earth would find a turquoise. One of its supposed powers was to aid the warrior or hunter by assuring the accuracy of his aim, for if a turquoise were affixed to a gun or bow, the shot sped from the weapon would go straight to the mark. A lady prominent in the London world is said to possess the power of restoring to their pristine hue turquoises that have grown pale. According to report, this lady is often called upon to use her peculiar gift by friends whose turquoises have faded. While the improvements supposed to be noted may be more imaginary than real in many cases, there is little doubt that this stone is exceptionally sensitive to the action of certain emanations, and may at times be influenced by the wearer's general state of health. The writer believes that a turquoise, like an egg, can never be restored to its original state.